All right. So for the part two of vocational psychology, we're going to look at just other theories and issues in counseling psychology that have been researched and applied to the work world. The first area that has had some research and counselors are active in is the school to work transition. So if you think back to your high school, maybe middle school, um, what were the guidance counselors talking about when they talked about leaving, graduating high school? Um, did they talk about options for college, for trade schools, for other types of jobs? What was often promoted by these counselors? So, counselors help transition people from school to work life, and they're trying to help students identify and realize their dreams, their potential, their interests, their careers that they want to pursue. But as your book mentions, oftentimes there's too much focus on college bound youth. So, assuming that everyone is interested in going to college, assuming that everyone wants to go to college and has the means to go to college. So, this part of counseling really needs to broaden to help students um, with their post graduation plans in any way, whatever type of work or career or jobs they're pursuing. So, some of the ways that counselors do this is by creating partnerships between businesses and schools. And students can learn different skills and occupations. Right now, I'm teaching a service learning in psychology course at St. Mary's, and we partner with local organizations where students can observe and learn um, what they like about different jobs, what they don't like. And these can be really helpful as people transition out of college, even into the work world, or high school into the work world. I know that when I was in high school, I shadowed a dentist one day because I was interested in that at one point. So, a little bit of research that has been done is that when students internalize that what they're doing in school, their homework and things, um, will help them in the real world, in their work life. So they internalize the link between, okay, if I put effort into school, it'll pay off when I, um, want to enter the work world. This actually leads to improved academic performance. So counselors try to show these links between what they're doing in school now to what they could do in the future in a variety of careers, and try to really help students see that the effort that they're doing now will help them in the long run. And counselors, the Career Center, for example, can help with college to career transition. And one website I would encourage you to check out is called ONET. This is a government website that has updated information on different salaries for different jobs, has job growth for different fields. It will link to the Holland codes, which we'll talk about in the next lecture. So this is a really good resource to help college students and really high school students um, sort of explore different careers and learning what they can do with their major, what they can do with beyond once they're out of college. So one theory that has been developed by psychologists regarding work is the theory of work adjustment. So a student leaves school, leaves college, leaves high school, and gets to their job. How do we predict as psychologists who's going to stay at their job? And this theory of work adjustment, sometimes called TWA, was developed at the University of Minnesota by Renee Dawes and Floyd Lofgren in 1984. And their theory has two components. Basically, they theorized that the length of stay on a job was predicted by two interacting components. First would be the satisfaction of the worker, so their self reported job satisfaction, and by the satisfactoriness of the supervisor. So the supervisor's rating of the performance of the worker. So we'll go in a little bit more depth on this, but basically, this theory is saying, okay, how do we keep people at their job? And they have to be satisfied themselves, and the job has to be satisfied with their work. So these two factors are really key. And there's things that the company can do to help promote job satisfaction. So the first would be to have a reasonable workload. If people are feeling overwhelmed by the amount of work that they have to do, they're going to get burnt out and not want to stay. If there's lots of time pressure, if there are organizational, political, or other concerns, these can play into um, someone saying too. So organizational politics, I think, is what I should have said. Should have said. And then the final piece is concerns about job security. So if someone's worried that they're going to lose their job all the time, this is going to impact how satisfied they are at their job. So employers can work on some of these things, having a healthy organizational climate. They can make sure that they're doing reasonable workloads, um, provide some sense of job security to help with job satisfaction. And again, this is to keep workers there. And again, as I mentioned earlier, employers want to keep workers at their job because to train new people is expensive, to go through the search and all of that. So we're going to look at these two different aspects of the theory of work adjustment and see how this could play out. And I created this matrix where on the top row in dark blue is the worker's satisfaction with their job. So if someone has high satisfaction, they would be in this box or in this row. And if they have low satisfaction, they're not liking their job, it would be one of these rows. And like I mentioned, this interacts with their satisfactoriness, so how the company is rating them. So we'll start with the first box. If someone is highly satisfied and they're having good ratings by their supervisor, so there's high satisfactoriness, this person is likely to stay at the job and excel. They're getting good ratings, good marks, they like their job, they're satisfied. Again, they're likely to stay. So if we move to, and this is called correspondence or congruence. So there's high correspondence between the two. Now, if someone is getting good ratings, it's still high satisfactoriness, but they're not very satisfied, there's a few different options. They can stay at their job. Maybe it provides a good income. Maybe there's no other options or something like that. They're used to it, they know it, but they might continue to be unhappy. Or if they become so dissatisfied, so very low dissatisfaction or low satisfaction, they might quit. Now we can imagine someone who really likes their job, but they start getting bad ratings. Their boss says, you're messing this up, you're not doing this right. And over they're having low satisfactoriness. There's again a few options that might happen. They might stay at their job with and end up on some sort of remediation plan. Like if you don't, do these things correctly in the next few times, you'll get fired, or they might just flat out get fired. So even though they like their job, if they're not performing well, they won't stay at the job long. And then finally, if someone's not satisfied with their job and they're getting low ratings, they're likely to be fired or quit, whatever sort of comes first. So this is the theory of work adjustment, TWA, and it's again trying to use psychology to help people stay at their jobs longer. And so we can try to increase satisfaction, We can have better trainings and things that they're getting high marks, high satisfactoriness. Again, this is the theory of work adjustment. Another issue that gets researched by counseling psychologists is the idea of work life balance. And many people talk about work life balance and how difficult this is. And so we're going to go through some models that have been developed, and you can sort of think about how different people in your life may think about work and life and this work life balance. So some of these models take different approaches. The first type of model is a segmented model or a segmentation model. This means that these types of models see work and life as separate, that these are separate parts of someone's life and they don't necessarily impact each other. There's someone's work life, there's, people, colleagues, there's issues at work, period. And then there's life issues, there's life relationships, and that there's sort of a big barrier between them, that they do not impact each other. Other types of models see it a little bit differently. They sort of see spillover, that there are times where work may end up conflicting or spilling over into life. Or there's times where life may over into work. So some examples of these might be, if you think about the first one, let's say your work is requiring a lot of you, there's extra pressure, there's, to get X, Y, and Z done. And so you're staying later at the office, you're working more hours. Well, this maybe could start impacting your relationships. Maybe your partner starts getting mad at you. Maybe, you're missing kids' games or something like that. So your work is going to spill over and impact your life. There are times in the reverse where life can impact work. So if, let's say, you had a recent death in the family and you're going through the grief process, and this might impact your work. You're not as productive. You might have to miss work to go to funerals or something like that. So there's times where life is going to be spilling over and conflicting and pushing into work. So the spillover model really sees these as somewhat connected. And the final model is this integrative model or reciprocal model, is that work and life will impact each other bidirectionally. You really can't separate them out. So this model is sort of just stating that work will impact your life, life will impact your work. If you have stressful things at work, probably it's going to impact your life. If you have stressful things in your life, it's going to impact your work, and vice versa with the good things. So if good things are happening at work, you're getting promoted, that's going to impact your life. Maybe you'll have more money. Um, if good things are happening in life, like you're um, finding um, good places to live, you're finding friends, that will likely impact your work because your mood will be better and so on. So basically, there's just different ways to look at work and life, and um, and how they interact with each other through these three models. The other thing that has been researched is some of these ways that when these conflicts happen between work and home life, there's different reasons behind them. So, a time based conflict is when there's literally a time conflict between work and life. So, you might miss a family birthday party because you have to go to a work related event. Or maybe you miss a big meeting because you have to go take care of your kid. So I just heard about a story with the Prime Minister of Canada who's quarantining at home and having to take care of kids, and was running late to a meeting because he was having to take care of his kids while his wife was separately quarantined. So that would be, I mean, just examples of ways that the time when you're spending at work might impact and might conflict with the time with the family and vice versa. Strain based conflict is when an example might be you're irritable with your family members following a stressful day at work. So the stress of one is going to cause conflict or impact the stress of the other. And behavior based conflicts occur when you're doing behaviors in one role that are incompatible with the other role. So let's say you're a boss at work and you are delegating X, Y, and Z, doing your subordinates have to do X, Y, Z, but you go home and you start doing that to your partner. Um, this might cause some problems because that behavior that's working in work doesn't work the same way with your partner where you're expected to be equal. You can't just delegate them to do something. So these are different ways that um, work and home life may conflict. Some newer views of work life balance include the work family enrichment theory, is that it doesn't put them in conflict. So all the prior models say that they're sort of fighting with each other, that work negatively will impact your life, or life will negatively impact work. But this model says that they can actually enrich each other. So things that you're learning and doing at work might actually enrich your life at home, or things that you're doing at home might actually enrich your work life. And they can also serve as buffers. So they're not necessarily just going to be affected negatively, but if something's going good, for example, at work, maybe that buffers some of the stress that's happening at home. Or if something's going bad at home, maybe having a really solid family or partnership or roommate or friendship might actually buffer some of your stress from work. So this view sort of just sees them as they're differing support systems. They offer different perspectives. Um, they're working in different ways, but they can actually sort of balance each other out and provide some um, counterbalance to each other. Other things, just newer ways to look at it, is the changing definition of family and changing definition of life. So, what some people considered family might be the nuclear family, parents and kids, but um, as society gets more diverse and is able to recognize more diverse configurations, this will expand as we include broader definitions of family, including extended family and so on. And same with life, as people have developed new hobbies and things, quote unquote, life looks different as well. So just want you to reflect on how your work life balance is right now. Does it feel like there's overwhelming amounts of work? Being in quarantine or social distancing probably doesn't feel like you have too much of a life right now. So think about ways that you might want to enhance those. Maybe it's structuring time for work, or doing things that enrich your life, even if you can't be with your friends or with your loved ones. So I want to just do a quick riddle for you, and I want you to think about your answer as I read this riddle. A man and his son are driving in their car when they are hit by a tractor trailer, like a semi truck. The father dies instantly. The son is badly injured and is rushed to the hospital by paramedics. As he is being wheeled into the operating room, the surgeon takes one look at the boy and says, I can't operate on him. He's my son. So the riddle is, how is this possible? I'll give you a few seconds to think about this. So hopefully you've thought about this a little bit. Um, the surgeon, for example, could be this boy's mom, or maybe it could be this boy's other dad if he has two dads. So, what this riddle is trying to get at is that we have stereotypes about different jobs. And oftentimes, when people read this riddle, they see surgeon and automatically their stereotype is a man. And then it's sort of supposed to surprise you or make you think when when you hear that the surgeon is the father or the patient is the son of the surgeon. So again, it could be that it's his mom. It could be that it's his other dad. There's other sort of ways to solve this riddle, but this leads us into our next topic, which is how gender impacts career choices. And this was first developed, this theory about how gender impacts career choices by Gottfredson in the 1980s and then updated again in the 1990s. And this theory is really looking at how gender socialization starts pretty young, early in development. So if you think about the toys that you played with growing up, likely some of the toys are fairly gendered, blocks um, or dolls, um, doctors, nurses, all of these things are often quite gendered when we think about careers. And so this theory has two different components that we'll walk through. And according to Gottfredson, this is what happens as kids grow up. The first is that they start eliminating unacceptable alternatives, unacceptable career choices. And Gottfredson calls this circumscription. So as a child grows up, they start picking up what is a quote unquote unacceptable or acceptable job choice for their gender. And this sort of narrows in on what is a tolerable um, career. And so the careers that are particularly um, very feminine for boys or very masculine for girls start being seen as, I don't think that's acceptable. That's sort of a quote unquote unacceptable job for boys or girls. And so they start ruling out jobs that are on an end that sort of um, doesn't fit with their gender stereotype. And this happened to me. I remember as a really young child thinking about liking dance, and because I only saw women dancers, I started to say, "Oh, dancing's not for boys," and so sort of ruled out that career option. Just as an example, perhaps some girls might rule out things like um, plumber, or they might rule out things like computer scientists because they don't see many women in those fields. So they start narrowing in this circumscription process, eliminating jobs that they think are sort of quote unquote unacceptable for their gender. And so then the compromise is they go for more accessible options, ones that seem to fit um, within their realm of what they see as a acceptable or accessible option. And sometimes this also has to do with the prestige of the job. So over here, you can see that if something is deemed not prestigious as enough, they might aim a little bit higher. But if something is too idealistic, they might aim a little bit lower. So they're going for this acceptable zone. So, according to this theory, gender and prestige play a role in how you pick your career. And you might want to think about your own career choices and how you came to decide on what major you want to major in, what jobs you're interested in, and so on, and see how this plays out. Just one final note about this is that when they've looked at research trying to get, for example, women into science, technology, fields, that interventions really need to begin before middle school because if by then they've already started ruling things out in middle school of saying this isn't for girls. So same and then same with boys. So interventions really need to begin before middle school to sort of keep these options open because perhaps someone could be a great um, computer scientist or dancer, but we want to keep as many options open as possible. So, the final theory to talk about related to vocation, work, is Bluestein's 2006 Psychology of Working. And Bluestein was really trying to broaden up this field. Um, a lot of the work has been done on careers, assuming that people have a lot of choice in choosing their careers. And Bluestein really noted that for most people in the world, this idea of choice is not perhaps a reality. If you think about people's educational opportunities, people living in poverty, um, there are so many factors working against them that if you just talk about careers broadly, assuming that everyone has the same abilities, opportunities, um, that it's really quite narrow definition of work. And so Bluestein wanted to broaden this out and really look at work as a whole. So, work for everybody. What does work do for people? And Bluestein believes that work has three primary functions. So, the most obvious one is that we need work to survive. This is, we offer our exchange of work and we get money and goods in return. We get food, we can buy food with that money, we can have shelter. And so work really does help us survive in this world. And it also gives us power and different status. So Bluestein says that all types of work provide this um, or hope to provide this function of survival and power. Now, obviously, not all work is created equal and not all work gets the same amount of money or goods. So that's probably more of an issue in society. But that's one reason why people work. The second function of work or reason why people work is to have social connection. And Bluestein asserts in his theory that um, we go to work in part to connect to others. And we get a lot from our relationships with our colleagues. They're not quite friendships, they're not quite family, um, but they provide something different. They provide a sense of community in a way and helps us connect to our communities, our larger context. And Bluestein does note that often work provides a sense of self determination. So someone can um, be motivated to work for different reasons. So some people work to make ends meet. They they're not pursuing their passion. They are just, they have bills to pay. This is what they're doing to make money. Other people work because they're interested in the opportunities. Other people work because they have an intrinsic interest in that field and they want to help people, for example, and that helps solidify their identity. So there's lots of different ways that people can craft work to fit for them. And Bluestein sort of sees work as an essential part of our lives, sees it similar to kids with play. Kids need to do something. They like to be productive. And for kids, that's play. They like to, play with toys, play games. And part of Bluestein's theory is that as adults, we need to do something too, and work provides us this that we can determine and feel this sense of production, being productive, um, and really helping us move our lives in hopefully a good direction. So this wraps up this chapter on vocational psychology. Again, this chapter really focused in a lot of different theories. And so the next chapter that we talk about, the career counseling, is sort of the application of these theories to counseling. So now that we know a little bit about um, the research that's been done, theories that have been developed about work, how do we help people when they come into our office and are looking for some guidance and counseling? All right, that will be in a few weeks. I know that this after this posting, we'll have a few week break because we're doing role plays and we have an exam. So hope to see you in the Zoom check-in on Monday and hope you're well.